This is a Geek Leader podcast, and I'm your host, John Rauda. This show is all about helping us grow as leaders, become better technologists, and improve our lives both at work and at home. I hope you enjoy the show and learn a lot. Welcome to a Geek Leader podcast. I'm your host, John Rauda. And if you could, please do me a favor and take a moment and leave a rating and review in whatever podcast player you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, doesn't matter. I would greatly appreciate it. And that feedback really helps get other listeners to the show. Also, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And if you feel so inclined, you can go to geekleader.com/tip and donate to the show. Thanks so much. All right, Geek Leaders, today I'm honored to have Richmond Alake on the show. He is an AI machine learning practitioner with an academic background in computer vision, robotics, and machine learning. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. Actually, probably a lot bit about that. And he's a developer advocate at MongoDB, which I know we've talked about MongoDB in the past on the show. So we'll talk about that a little bit more today as well. Anyway, with all that being said, Richmond, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me, John. It's a pleasure to talk to you and your audience on all things AI and MongoDB. Looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun. If you don't mind, just tell the audience a little bit about your background, how you got into machine learning, AI stuff, and what is it that you do?
How I got into machine learning and AI stuff was typically out of boredom. I used to be a web developer for about 3 years, and I sort of reached to, I guess, the height as to which I could get to. Then I just got bored of just doing web development. Then I thought to myself, what's next? So AI is the logical step, transferable skills, coding. Then I bought a massive textbook on one of the old school textbook on machine learning. And it really just skewed my perception of AI and machine learning as this very difficult topic. So I got scared and I decided to go to university to get a master's because I thought it was a very complicated topic. Now, people on YouTube could turn you into AI experts in like one video, apparently.
Yeah, that's how it works these days. So when you get into is there a difference really between AI and machine learning? Because as being not an expert in the field, I've always when I get suspect when I hear people say, "Oh, it's using AI," I'm like, "Is it really, or is it machine learning, or is there a difference anymore?"
Well, you can think of AI as a term that encompasses everything that involves any computational model that seems a little bit intelligent. So AI is easy to sell than machine learning. But what really is happening is in most AI products is some form of machine learning. But artificial intelligence sounds cool.
It does sound cool.
Yeah.
It sounds scary too.
To get into the details, machine learning typically is the process of developing algorithms that essentially learn from data. And what then that results to is for you to have the systems or applications that can emulate some form of intelligence or look to be intelligent. So in a sense, it's some form of intelligence that's artificial, it's not human, so it's AI.
Yeah, for real. So I want to talk to also a little bit about your transition to, you said you got bored with being a web developer, which I totally get. I was a web developer for many years. I managed web developers for a while too. So I totally understand that. But, when you get into learning something new like AI, do you see ways that web developers can be using AI today to maybe do better at their jobs? And what is that transition like?
Yeah. So the question is there any way that web developers can use AI to do the jobs today?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, there's loads of, the narrative I see on YouTube generally is AI is taking over software development.
Right, yeah, everybody's going to use Copilot and, write their code for them, yeah.
If there was some form of AI that could do all my coding for me, or all I have to do is just relax while it happens, I'll be the first one to jump on board. But we're yet to see something that works. But how web developers can definitely use AI to optimize the productivity and develop these products is generally using AI as some form of code reviewer is the first thing. But let me even take you a step backwards. Before you even start coding, what I normally tend to do is plan wherever I'm building, whatever system architecture I'm building, or just at least know what steps I'm taking. I use some form of intelligent entity, either GPT or Claude, for that, just to see, have I got the right plan? Have I got the right steps? Then I can start coding if it's an easy process. So I use AI to plan. I use AI to do some code reviews, and I use AI to find some holes in my code because I'm usually hacking away. But when you want to move things into production, you want to at least test the systems in various ways. So you have unit testing, integration testing, regression testing, but you can actually do some form of testing where you just put the code, if it's not sensitive code, you can just put it into a tool like ChatGPT and just ask it, hey, is this code production grade? And it might give you some recommendations on how to improve it that you can implement. So you can use AI as some form of, I would say, senior developer.
Yeah, it's almost like you're having peer programming with the AI, or doing code reviews with.
Yeah, that's the word, pair programmer. You can use AI for that.
Yeah, and that's cool, kind of a novel way of thinking about it. I haven't done that before. I definitely have used it for planning phases. I think that's really important to see, like I'll put a plan in there or like an outline or something and say, what am I missing here? Like what step is not here that should be here?
Yeah.
And I get some helpful responses sometimes with things like that. So how important is it, like if a company, you kind of mentioned this in briefing, like if it's not sensitive code, how important is it like to kind of be aware of what we put into these language models, or maybe even should we build on top of our own to have to allow for use with sensitive data or sensitive code?
Yeah, I think firstly it's important for you to know the data policies of whatever model provider you're using. Mm-hmm. I think in the early days, don't quote me on this, but OpenAI was using some of data you pass through ChatGPT to train the models. I think they don't use it anymore. They probably got enough to start creating synthetic data set. But as a developer, you should be aware of the data policies or whatever third-party model provider that you're using for either your own personal task or your company's task. Another thing is there's a lot of open source models, LLMs out there you can just get from Hugging Face and run one locally. And you can pretty much get similar, if not almost similar results in terms of outputs and text generation quality that are coming out from these open source models. And again, apart from the data policy, you probably should be aware of the commercial use of some of these open models. So these are things that you should be aware of if you're taking any sort of AI product into production. So those are generally the things I would say to look out for in terms of data policies and putting sensitive code into third-party model providers.
Yeah, so when it comes to these open source models that you can kind of build upon, create your own applications even, what kind of tools are needed to do something like that? Like where would you start if your boss tasks you with creating, to grabbing an open source one and creating your own, application? Maybe it's a help desk application that can help people, just help respond to some of your internal policies or procedures, or how to do some of your SOPs internally.
Yeah. So generally, where you probably want to start from is a very obvious place to anyone that's within the open source community, and that's on Hugging Face. They have a large repository, so I would take things a bit backwards. So at MongoDB, we recognize that there are three commodities within AI. So you have compute, you have data, and you have compute, you have data, and you have the models. Essentially, those are the three commodities within AI. And you can find most of those, or if not all of them, on Hugging Face. So Hugging Face, you can quickly spin up, just take open source model, and they are very, very good abstraction libraries and functionalities that can help you fine tune these open models or open source models on your own proprietary data, essentially fine tuning them for your own specific use case. And you fine tune generally when you want to tune the outputs of the model to a certain to your data set. So Hugging Face will be a good place to start for discoverability of the models that are out there, mm-hmm. the data sets that are out there, and actually access to compute, which is the file that I mentioned, which is a GPU to actually train these models on. So Hugging Face have an interface with AWS and overall cloud providers where you can actually start to fine-tune some of these models. And did I mention data set?
Yeah, a little bit. So where do so you get a data set, but if you wanted to train it on your own, how do you get your data in that data set? Like, you know what I mean? Like if I have my own, like let's say I have like a Confluence page with all kinds of articles that we built internally on how to do certain things, and we want to train it so like I can just ask questions and get answers that way.
Oh, so look, before you get into training the models, there's a much cheaper alternative. Retrieval Augmented Generation is RAG architecture. So fine-tuning a model sounds cool, and it's something that if you like to hack away, you should try. But it can be costly because of the resources I mentioned, which is compute. Not everyone has access to compute, but there's an alternative to getting the model to at least give you the output you want before you actually start exploring fine-tuning. So Retrieval Augmented Generation is a paradigm that has emerged, and it's probably the one popular method of developing LLM application. And the way it works is essentially you have an embedding model that you can use to create vector embeddings of whatever data you have, and you place those vector embeddings on a vector database like MongoDB, essentially. And within MongoDB has a very good system that enables efficient retrieval of this vector embedding. So when you then prompt your LLM locally or wherever you're hosting them, you can actually do an information retrieval based on the embeddings and retrieve relevant metadata that are semantically similar to the actual query prompt from your knowledge source. Then you basically put this into the prompt, give it to the LLM, and it's able to give you essentially a response grounded in your data. So it becomes more relevant to your data set. Another thing you could try to actually get the model to do what you want it to do is prompt engineering. So if we were to rank things, I would say try prompt engineering first to be able to get the outputs you want from the model. Just give an example. There are different prompt engineering techniques in context learning. You could do some prompt templating using the React template. Different processes such as chain of thoughts as well. So these models are very good at following instructions, especially the bigger they get in terms of parameters. So prompt engineering level 0. So level 1, you try things like RAG, and RAG comes in different flavors. It's an architecture that you can optimize in different ways and different components. So you can optimize the embedding model. You can optimize the distance function you're using to calculate the proximity between vector embeddings. You can optimize the retrieval. You can add a re-ranker to re-rank the documents that are retrieved. And all of this is, again, with MongoDB, we make all of this very easy to set up with the integration we have, with the database features we have as well. So then you can go into the realm of fine-tuning if you're maybe working within a very, very domain-specific use case. But there is a sentiment that fine-tuning might phase out as we move. Fine-tuning might phase out in a few years as these models, both open source and private models, get much smarter at following instructions and learning from examples. And RAG might be the prominent technique. But as we know, we try not to make any predictions within AI that goes longer than next week.
Yeah, because it's changing so fast for sure. And can you tell me a little bit about, like, for people that aren't familiar with, what is RAG? What kind of architecture is that, and how does that relate to LLM exactly?
Yeah, so RAG stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation. So it's an information retrieval system, essentially, and very high level. What you're trying to do is when you're typing your prompt into ChatGPT, or you're typing your prompt into a language model, you actually want to supplement that prompt with relevant data, right? This is data that you could have sitting within your database or even real-time data. You just want to supplement it with relevant data. So retrieval augmented generation is a process that actually uses something called uses a vector search to be able to retrieve relevant data within a data source by using vector search between the query and the vectors you have in your database. So it looks for a semantic similarity between these two data points. RAG enables organizations, individuals, enterprises to ground the response of the LLM in data, in their own proprietary data. So you get something more bespoke coming out of this language model. So MongoDB plugs itself as the vector database provider, but even goes beyond that and can handle the operational data, the metadata that you have for your application. And that's where we fit in.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm trying to think about this in like a different use cases, and potentially you could do something to where you have, let's say you have a metadata library of let's say films or media that you have, and you have everything tagged with who the actors are and where they're at, things like that. And you could use an LLM that you could ask it, like, based off of this data, give me all the scenes where Tom Cruise is wearing a red hat or something like that. And it can kind of not only search for that, but also say, what about like, your data is not going into ChatGPT or anything like that. You're keeping it here, but it's answering questions about it, or like, I don't know. I can't think of a good example now that I've gone down that path.
It's fine, because over at MongoDB Developer Center, we have tons of examples that shows different use cases as to where you utilize RAG, or even go a bit further and look at agentic systems. So the link will be in the show notes, where we have we have a very good team that puts together AI content, and we break down when to use it, how to use it in text and in code. So we've got you there, John.
Good. Do you find that people are sometimes putting AI into systems where it's not needed? They're kind of just like overkilling it by, saying, "Oh,
As in, personally, I've not run into anyone putting AI where it's not needed, because, again, I think we're the type of customers or the type of people that I deal with have reached a certain level of maturity where they can start to explore, again, for very loosely, AI techniques. We have to, I try to be careful about using the word AI. So, but there are very simple, much simpler machine learning techniques that you can employ for very simple problems like classification, or even use simple load convolutional neural networks for typical computer vision tasks before you start going down the realm of maybe vision transformers, or even transformers themselves. So the scope of the problem really has to be explored, and there needs to be a different potential solutions that you need to definitely take into consideration before investing in going for that fine-tuning infrastructure. You definitely have to do your research before you start putting in a budget for a project that is exceeding several hundred thousands of dollars.
Yeah, for sure. Do you find that like, or what do you recommend when it comes to like AI agents and use there?
So the first thing I recommend is to have a very good source that provides you with credible information into AI. So that's the first thing I recommend for anyone exploring the space. And the reason why I say that, this space is developing very quickly, and people are experimenting with a lot of things. And you're going to notice that there isn't that much players in terms of in production with agents at the moment, especially at the enterprise level, because agents are still in the they're just coming out of this proof of concept phase, right? And when you start looking at enterprise customers where you're serving millions of customers, you don't want to start going and giving them a system that is not at least predictable in terms of the output and the process it's taken, or it just seems like a black box and you don't know what's going on. So there's a lot of proof of concept agentic systems that we're seeing and we're building ourselves that are very useful and will become pretty much the form factor for AI application either later this year or in the years to come. But where you want to get good resources is, one, for your knowledge, and MongoDB in the developer center and on our blogs, we talk about these topics a lot. RAG, agentic system, because we're building it, we're experimenting with it, we're actually thought leaders within this space. And one thing that we're particularly looking at is memory within the agentic system. So agents are just the best way to think about agents, and I have this mnemonic, which is BAP, becoming a person. Just think about agents as that, right? So if you just visualize BAP, so the B is the brain, the A is the action, and the P is the perception. AI agents have a brain, which is the LLM. It could be right. GPT-4, it could be Llama, it could be anything. And they have the ability to take actions. And actions are basically tools, which are scripts, essentially, that the agent can invoke to interact with other systems. And then there are perception. Now, perception for text models is just plain text, but there are multimodal agents that can take in visual images as well. And when you think about that mnemonic or the abbreviation BAP, you get AI agents. And MongoDB within this system within agentic system, we are the memory provider for this, for agents. And it really clicks when you think about it. We humans have different forms of memory. So we have short-term memory, long-term memory, and we have episodic memory, right? We're still discovering new things about human brain and memory, but we have basics down. And agents need this system or something similar. They need a way to store memory. They need a way to store the things, the interactions they're having in a long-term memory system. And they also need a way to have access to short-term information or memory within the short term. So MongoDB provides these capabilities in various forms. So we can be an operational data store where you can store your conversations that the agent is having with other systems, or the audit logs or the system logs. And we can also be that knowledge base with our vector database, vector database and vector search solution. And we can also have other instance of memory, such as for quick recall, we can do something such as semantic cache. We can actually be the semantic cache layer of your agent as well. So there's a lot of experimentation and thinking that we can take with agents. But when you make it very simple, it's not that difficult, because agents are basically becoming a person.
Yeah, I like the way you explained it with short-term and long-term memory. It's almost like the short-term is the conversation you're having right now, whereas long-term is all the data that's accumulated over, the use of that model. Yeah, it's a really easy way to kind of understand it that I haven't heard explained before in that term. So that's really cool. So you kind of mentioned a little bit about vision and versus just text models, because like images and video are kind of where a lot of things are moving to, and there's a lot of, especially in the medical world, a lot of use cases when it comes to imagery and use of AI when it comes to like scanning for diseases or cancer, or even looking at like MRIs for injuries and things like that can potentially be very beneficial. Where do you see this space going, and how does MongoDB fit in with some of that?
So in terms of the space of vision, computer vision and whatnot, that has to do with all this multimodal models. MongoDB is still where it's still the central form for hosting, for holding your data. So let me explain. When you're actually building this models, it could be vision or text models, you need a place to host the data and feed the data into this model. Now you can host the data on your machine, but we all know that the amount of data that is required to actually train these foundation models is vast. So MongoDB could act as a data store for that data where you can feed it during the training process. We have a streaming platform, and you can feed it in different ways, in batch or in single instances. The next thing is actually acting as, like I've mentioned, a memory provider for whatever systems this multimodal models are actually going to be in. So wherever AI infrastructure or systems you have, MongoDB is there as your vector database or your operational database, and at a very high level, the memory provider. And for developers, and when I speak about MongoDB as a memory provider, I'm talking within an agentic system. But for developers, MongoDB is the data platform, right? So we have a suite of tools that allows you to be very productive and useful with data. And it will be in the show notes, a link to some resources that show you the different technologies that we have in MongoDB that allows developers to be very productive with data and very useful and build these AI applications very quickly. We'll put those in the show notes because those are very helpful.
Okay, yeah, for sure. I want to spend a few minutes just talking a little bit about some of the things that you're doing on your YouTube channel to help people when it comes to development tools and activities and things like that. Because I went and watched some of your videos. You have some very informative things that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the team at MongoDB the AI team here, we're very active, and we're active in different forms, not just within the MongoDB ecosystem, but outside the MongoDB ecosystem, because we are passionate about this field. So we literally live, breathe, and eat AI, essentially. So my channel is just a manifestation of that. So I like to teach, and I like to learn. So my YouTube channel at the moment is focused on whenever you see a model come out from one of the big model providers, I like to educate folks on what these models are, how you can build them using MongoDB with a very good secure database system, and some use cases. So in one video, I created an AI agent that could replace me. So part of my day-to-day task is to review technical articles. And I was in Tokyo, and I had to review an article, and I just thought, you know what? Let me build an agent for this. I could build an AI agent that could just be me and just put some comments on a Google Doc and review the article like it's me. I just need to tell it, give it some instructions and how I would review the document. And it did well, right? So with MongoDB, we have tools that allows you to build these agents very quickly, where the difficulty is not building the AI agents or building your AI application, but the difficulty is lying in how you're actually thinking about the process. So you don't have to battle or wrangle with the database technology or the components. You actually focus on what really matters, which is the customer. What features do I want to build for the customer? How should they be? Not how should I be modeling my data, or will I need to think about how long term if the data structure is going to change. MongoDB is very flexible. We have MongoDB is based on a NoSQL. It's a NoSQL database based on the JSON document model, which if you were in the web developer world is what we use to build applications. JSON is how REST
all the web services. Yeah.
Exactly. MongoDB takes that document model and uses it in a database layer. So it really allows the developer to think about the application, and rather than the components you're using to build the application.
Yeah, very good. And I do want to just point out that you're an excellent teacher. So I really appreciate all the content you're putting out there, because it makes it so easy to learn. So yeah, thank you for that. For sure. So what are some of the things that you see are on the horizon in the future? Because you mentioned that AI is changing every minute. It's something new, something different. We have to be thinking about that. Where do you see this going in the next 6 months to a year?
Okay.
I know that's a loaded question, but
yeah. You just see me sweating. So look, there's some obvious things which are there are patterns that we can follow. So let's start with that. So context window. As we're talking now,
Google have just released Gemini 1.5 Pro, and that has a context window of 2 million, right? That is massive. That you could put a massive amount of data in one shot into this models. 2 million context window is massive. So you can safely predict that maybe the context windows for this, and by context window, this is the amount of data you can put, the amount of prompt or text you can fit into a LLM in one shot, right? When you query it, and that has gone into 2 million tokens, which is very massive. So a prediction in 6 months is we might see more expansion of the context windows of the LLM, allowing them to take in more data. And that's a safe prediction. So I don't know where it will start. 2 million is massive. Maybe 10 million, who knows? So that's a prediction that we can see for a safe one for the next 6 months. But really, in terms of the form factor of the application of AI application, I think there is going to be a lot of workflow automations that we're going to see coming out from AI products. And there are 2 ways it can go. There are going to be companies that really want to remove humans from the process, right? And they just say, hey, just give one instruction and the agent is going to do it for you. And you get the end results. But they're going to be clever companies that realize that workflow, or the workflows that we're involved in as professionals, actually have a form of human element in them. And companies are going to start to realize that these applications need some form of interface. Agentic applications need some form of interface that keep human within the loop. They keep human in the loop. So, for example, I could have built an AI agent that can act like me and review an entire Word document. Now, to keep myself in the loop and not entirely lose my job, what I can basically put is before any edits are made to this document, the AI agent to just give me a summary of what it's changed or what is suggested to be changed. And I could just click approve or maybe go in and just change a few things before it sends it or emails the changes or the request for edits over to the writers. So you keep that human in the loop within the system. So there is going to be a lot of conversations around the form factor and the interface of AI applications when dealing with consumers, with customers. And MongoDB is definitely speaking to the right people when we're talking about agentic system, or we're talking about AI applications in general. And we're learning from the builders within the space and also the customers within the space in terms of what they need and what they want. And regardless of the form factor, regardless of what happens in AI, this will remain true. AI needs data, and data needs to be stored. Agents need memory. So MongoDB is still going to be here, regardless of whatever future AI takes, just being very close to the developer, helping them become productive.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. And I think you're right about there's definitely some companies that just want to get rid of people and just put AIs in there to cut costs. But, that's the difference between good and great. You need a human in there, I still think, to make things human, to make it relate to us better and to work better. And I think Microsoft probably branded it the best when they called it a co-pilot. It's having, you're not giving it full control. You're giving it, with supervision, control with supervision.
And that is perfectly said, with supervision. That's what we're going in. Maybe there's a future where they don't need supervision, but companies need to think about the messaging when they're bringing out this AI products in terms of how they're perceived by consumers. And it's good old marketing, really.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. The way it's marketed, that's 100% right. I think this is great. I think it's been a great conversation, and it's a good way to get people into thinking about some of the tools that are out there with AI. And definitely we're going to link those articles that you mentioned from MongoDB in the show notes. If you can send those to me, we'll get that linked up for sure. How can people connect with you online, learn more about what you're doing, and maybe learn from some of your examples?
Yeah, so the best place to see what I'm doing within MongoDB is on Developer Center. We put out articles, myself and my team. We put out articles weekly that give you the best resources on how to build LLM applications and AI applications. So Developer Center, you can search for the profile of individuals that are focused on AI. The next best place is to LinkedIn. I post a lot on LinkedIn. I think I'm funny. My brother tells me I'm not. But I tend to put some witty posts on LinkedIn. I'm trying, so you can reach me on LinkedIn. I'm trying to get the hand of Twitter. I still haven't got it yet. I keep posting, but the followers are not coming. So you can give me some advice on that, John. And yeah, YouTube. Watch my videos, check out my channels. Comment. I read some of the comments people put and some of the suggestions because I'm still learning in all aspects of AI in life. I'm just learning. So yeah.
Awesome. This has been a great conversation, Richmond. I really appreciate having you on the show. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Hope you enjoyed the show. Please go to geekleader.com to learn more about what this guest is up to, click on their links, and connect with them online. I would also greatly appreciate it if you could leave me a rating and review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to the show. Make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already. And if you feel so inclined, you can leave me a tip by going to geekleader.com/tip.